Hey, welcome to SI Now. To everyone watching on Facebook Live, happy Monday. Thanks for following along. Coming up later on the show, we're going to rehash the NFL draft with our experts. Also, our fantasy guru, Michael Beller, will explain which new draft picks you should target for your team. We'll also speak with Leonard Fournette's high school coach. We begin today with the NBA. Basketball analyst Jordan Schultz is here alongside NBA writer Rohan Nadkarni. We're going to put you guys on the clock. The shot clock. I'm going to ask a question. You're each going to have 24 seconds to state your case. Now, the very first topic is the LA Clippers. They were eliminated by the Jazz in the first round and now face a very uncertain future. Jordan, is it time for the Clippers to get rid of the core of Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and Doc Rivers? You have 24 seconds on the clock. Go.
Let's blow this thing up like Mount Vesuvius. I mean, seriously. Enough is enough. You know, they got the fourth highest payroll in the league, okay? Chris Paul has never been to a conference final. We know that. Blake can't stay healthy. JJ Redick is a free agent. Enough is enough. I mean, at some point, you got to figure out this is not working out. I know it's great to have superstars, but if they don't play together, then eventually you realize it's not going to happen. And I think with Doc Rivers, you know, he's a good coach, but he put this whole thing together in many ways. He's the GM as well. So I don't think you need to move on from him. But I think with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, you have to make a decision. If I were the Clippers, I'd retain CP3 and move on from Blake. Very interesting. Rohan, you also have 24 seconds. Go.
I got to agree with a lot of what Jordan's saying right now. I think the plan for the Clippers is this. You keep Chris Paul. He's one of the most talented point guards in the league. He's proven that. I think his game can age fairly well. I think Blake Griffin's probably out. In terms of Doc Rivers, I mean, you look at his tenure as GM. It's not been very successful. I think he can coach this team, but make a move, change in the front office. I think you get rid of Doc's president title, keep Chris Paul, and see what you can do moving forward.
Okay, so you guys basically agree that changes need to be made and that Chris Paul can stay, but everything else should be in flux.
I don't know if we're doing points, but I kept it in my time limit there.
Yeah. I didn't keep it.
We're gonna give that point to Rohan simply because. Okay, the Raptors and the Cavs, they begin a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals. Rohan, what's the one thing that needs to happen for Toronto to pull off an upset? You have 24 seconds. Go.
I think the big thing for the Raptors is getting a huge series out of Serge Ibaka. He's, I think, the key to any success they're going to have in this series. He allows them to play all these kinds of different lineups. He is the key to their versatility. So I think what they need, you know, if he outplays Kevin Love, I think that kind of gives them a chance. So I think if you see Serge Ibaka having a big series, it's a good sign for the Raptors. I don't think Valanciunas is going to be very effective. They need to go small and beat Cleveland with their shooting.
Okay, so Serge Ibaka could be the key in your mind. Jordan Schultz, 24 seconds. Keep it 24
I like the
and go.
Ibaka because you remember last year they had success with Biyombo. Different skill set, but same type of deal in many respects with the four. I will say this, Toronto last year, they won 2, right? But they were outscored almost 16 points a game in that 6-game series. Wasn't that close. For me, the key is absolutely Kyle Lowry. He was not good in the playoffs last year. He's been better, you know, at least so far against Milwaukee. Got to get the pick and roll game going. Has to be shooting 40% from 3. All in all, they lose the series.
Okay. Doesn't matter anyway. No. They're going to lose, according to both of you. I'm going to give the point there to Jordan. I think Kyle Lowry really does need to have a big series. All right, the Celtics overcame a sluggish start and a lost tooth from Isaiah Thomas to beat the Wizards in Game 1. Jordan, aside from Isaiah Thomas, aside from Wizards point guard John Wall, who is the most important player in this series? You have 24 seconds.
Yes. Go. Bradley Beal. I mean, listen, if they're going to win this series, and I actually think they will, even down 1-0, Bradley Beal has to go off. 25, 30 points a night. It's possible. My only issue with it, and this is why he's the X factor, is how much energy is he going to consume going after Isaiah Thomas? Because he guarded him in Game 1. I think he's going to have to guard him continually moving forward. That's a concern. But him and Wall both have to be great. Beal has to be sensational.
Okay, Bradley Beal as the sidekick to John Wall has to be great. Rohan, you have 24 seconds on the clock. Go.
I'm going to pick another sidekick because it's going to be on the other side of the ball, or other team rather. It's Al Horford. You look at what he did in Game 1, almost put up a triple-double. There's been a lot of talk that Al Horford deserves his max contract. I mean, he's a great player, kind of an unheralded superstar. Boston needs one more person to step up. You know, they've been terrible when Isaiah sits so far during the regular season and the playoffs. I think Al Horford can be that guy that can provide scoring, ball handling, and playmaking for this team.
All right. I'm going to go with Rohan on this one, just because Al Horford, he's supposed to be this big superstar. Where has he was great in Game 1. He was great in Game 1, but has he left his stamp on this playoffs? Not yet. Okay, the Warriors swept the Trailblazers. Now they'll face Utah. So, Ron, I'm going to go back to you. Will Golden State also sweep the Jazz? You have 24 seconds. Go.
You know what? Yeah, I think they will. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. You look at what they did to the Blazers without Kevin Durant, without Matt Barnes, without Sean Livingston, without Steve Kerr. I mean, it's like Golden State is playing with one hand behind their back just for the challenge. I mean, I don't see Utah putting out much of a fight in this series. You know, with Kevin Durant back in lineup, back healthy, I think we'll see more of the death lineup that didn't play a lot in the first round. So I have Golden State winning this one easily.
Okay, and a sweep. Jordan Schultz, you have 24 seconds to make your case. Go.
Picked Utah against the Clippers. I think they can get one, maybe two in this series. They're going to surprise a lot of people. Did you guys know Rudy Gobert over 14 win shares a game? If he's healthy in this series, I hope he is. I think he can be a big difference against the Warriors. And also Joe Johnson, ISO Joe, he's been great. Obviously, they have to get better point guard play, Utah. But when it comes down to it, Derek Favors, another guy, I think he can help them. They get one or two in this series.
All right. I also think that Utah's going to steal a game or two. They played 3 times in the regular season. Warriors won 2 out of 3, but they did get 1. So point goes to Jordan Schultz there. All right, staying in the Western Conference, the Rockets and the Spurs meet in the second round matchup. Jordan, who would you rather have in this one series? Is it Kawhi Leonard or James Harden? You have 24 seconds.
Not even close.
Go.
Give me Kawhi Leonard. San Diego State, the kid from LA. You knew he was going to be a good NBA player. Nobody knew he'd be great, and that's what he is. He's a legitimate top 5 guy. I don't even think it's close. His ability on both ends of the floor, the big shot ability, Harden has that too. But defensively, he can lock you down. He can guard 4 positions. They go to him late all the time, pick and roll, post up. He can do anything on either side of the ball. For me, it's Kawhi. It's not close.
Wait, isn't James Harden also from LA?
Yeah, that's true. Artesia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rohan, you also have 24 seconds on the clock. Who would you rather have? Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, go.
Jordan's right. This one's not close. I think you got to go with Kawhi Leonard. I mean, look at what he did against the Grizzlies in those fourth quarters. The entire offense was running through him, and that was kind of the knock on Kawhi's MVP case. It's that he's a part of the system. He doesn't drive the system. Against Memphis, he was driving everything on offense for San Antonio. And, like Jordan said, whether it was pull-up threes, pick and roll, post-ups, whatever it is, I mean, he dominated those games offensively. And defensively, he's always been leagues ahead of Harden. So you got to go with Kawhi.
Listen, you guys made great points. You were tied 2-2 heading into that final question. You both picked Kawhi. In my opinion, that is the right answer from both of you. So we're going to call this one a tie for today. Great job, guys. Great sportsmanship there. Of course, basketball wasn't the only excitement over the weekend. Here's a look at who ended the weekend hot and who did not.
Hot or not, Rendon gets loose like Isaiah's tooth, while the Balls and the Clippers lose. The Clippers dropped their first-round matchup against the Jazz in 7 games after leading the series 3-2. This is the 3rd straight playoff series the Clippers have lost after leading. Big Baller Brand got Big Baller Banned. Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas all passed on sponsoring Lonzo Ball, whose father agent LeVar demanded the companies license his startup brand. Isaiah Thomas had something to smile about. Down 16 and an incisor in Game 1 against the Wizards, the Celtics stormed back to win by 10. Isaiah and his ad hoc dental work led the way with 33 points. Anthony Rendon raked, going 6 for 6 with 3 home runs and 10 RBIs. Rendon led the Washington Nationals in a 23-5 beatdown of the division rival Mets. Take a curtain call, Anthony. You deserve it.
Leonard Fournette was the first running back off the board in the 2017 NFL Draft. For some perspective and a look at Fournette's history, I'm pleased to welcome in one of his high school coaches, David Johnson. He's now the wide receivers coach for the Memphis Tigers. He's in New Orleans recruiting, so let's go there courtesy of Toyota. Let's go places. All right, Coach, considering that Fournette has been a football prodigy since he was in 8th grade and a career in the pros seemed inevitable, what was going through your mind when his name was called on Thursday night?
Just really proud. Understand that he worked extremely hard, and everybody understands he's extremely talented, has a lot of athletic ability, but just such a good kid, and you just always pull for a young man like that.
New Orleans is a city of temptations. It's dangerous in a lot of ways. How did Fournette avoid the dangers and pitfalls of that city?
I just think his parents did a great job of kind of guiding him in the right direction. I think his mom, Laura, and his dad, Leonard Sr., just did a great job of kind of staying on top of him, making sure he did the things that he needed to do to continue to be successful. And putting him in a good school like St. Augustine High School, where discipline is key, I think it helped out a lot.
Yeah, discipline is key. This is a school that still had corporal punishment up until about 2010, if I read that correctly. In high school, the superintendent said Fournette was more famous than Drew Brees. Now, considering his fame, the high expectations, in what ways was Fournette being groomed for a life in the spotlight from a very young age?
I just think he was at a high school that had a number of high-profile athletes in the past. But again, it was all about discipline, about school, and grooming and be a better young man. So he understood the part about being a really good athlete and understanding his role and what he owed to the city. I think the city did a great job of kind of really taking care of him from a young age. And his mom and dad just did a marvelous job of raising him.
He was the first running back taken in the 2017 draft. Do you think it would have bothered Fournette if McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook was taken ahead of him?
No, he understands how it works. He understands it's a business, and he just wanted to make sure he went to the team that really wanted him. I tell kids all the time, go where you're celebrated and not tolerated. So it didn't matter to him. Whatever team picked him and really wanted him, that's who he's going to give his all to.
Okay, so that team is Jacksonville. If you were going to sit down with Coach Doug Marrone and you were going to say, this is what you should do with Fournette, this is how you should coach him to get the maximum out of him, what would you say to Doug Marrone?
Leonard Fournette is a team player. And whatever the coaches ask of him, whatever that is, from blocking to playing special teams, catching the ball out the backfield, he's going to do whatever it takes for the team to win. And he's that type of player. Any special thing or trying to put him in a comfort zone, he just wants to win.
Did you see that in a young age from him? Where does that come from?
Again, I just think it's come from his playground coaches at Goretti. Did a great job with him being a young man. All the All-Star teams he played on with Al Sultan and the Louisiana Saints from a young age. So he's always just been a team player. And he understands that if he continued to be a team player, everybody would benefit.
His journey, was not without its speed bumps. He had injuries that sidelined him. Les Miles was fired as college coach at one point. He missed out on the Heisman. Did you two talk about these moments of adversity, and how do you think that will impact Leonard Fournette as a pro?
I just think those things were mine in his life. All the things that he went through as a young man, especially going through Hurricane Katrina, staying on the bridge for days. Those things just a part of life, and he understands that. His biggest thing is only two things are going to happen to him. That's lessons and blessings, things that he's going to learn from. So he continue to press on.
To talk about Katrina a little bit more, in what ways do you think that shaped him as a man?
Being forced in a situation like that, you just have to kind of grow up and kind of understand that these are the things that you have to do. And any given moment, life can change. So he understood that. He understands that life is precious. So he takes every moment and runs with it.
Is there a story that you have about Leonard Fournette that really you think encapsulates who he is, not just as a person, but as a football player? We heard he played nose tackle at one point for you when he was a small child.
Yes. Actually, probably going into his second year, which is my third year, we were extremely young. And we started off 0-3. And I explained to the team, told all my assistants to go inside. I talked to the team alone and told them that I had to do a better job of coaching and putting them in better position to be a better football team. And I just basically said, it was my fault and I was going to do a better job. Leonard Fournette stopped me and said, Coach, go inside. And again, we won 10 games in a row.
Wow. So it was Fournette saying, we got this, and taking some responsibility up for the player side?
Oh, that's what he said. He said, listen, Coach, it's not on you anymore. Take the training wheels off. We'll do it. And at that time, he was in the 10th grade.
Wow.
So, when you have a kid like that and with that type of confidence, and even after his first game as a freshman, he rushed for 300 yards, he told everybody to get on the bus and don't talk. Nobody should say anything. And at that time, I had a senior on my team, was the starting guard for the Carolina Panthers, which is Trey Turner. Nobody spoke on that bus till we got back to school. He was only 14.
Has leadership qualities at a very young age. David Johnson's now the wide receivers coach for the Memphis Tigers. Coach Leonard Fournette in high school. Congratulations to everyone who had a hand in getting Leonard Fournette to where he is today. That is with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Coach, good luck recruiting down there in New Orleans.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
The 2017 NFL Draft is in the books, and the latest crop of rookies to enter the league is now ready for its first spin in the fantasy football universe. The draft's top 2 running backs landed in wildly different environments, and my favorite fantasy rookie is a wide receiver from the Mid-American Conference. Christian McCaffrey was not the first running back selected in this year's draft. That honor went to Leonard Fournette, but it's McCaffrey who is in a better fantasy environment in Carolina than Fournette is in Jacksonville. There's no reason to question what McCaffrey can do with the ball in his hands. We all saw the show he put on at Stanford, and it's silly to think that won't transfer over in a meaningful way despite his stature. McCaffrey will split running back duties with Jonathan Stewart, a breakdown that should benefit both of them. While Stewart will almost certainly handle goal line work, McCaffrey will get the bulk, if not the entirety, of the receiving production out of Carolina's backfield. In today's NFL, that's nearly as valuable from a fantasy perspective as goal line carries. McCaffrey should make an instant impact in the fantasy game. There was plenty of debate as to who was the second best running back in a class loaded with them, but there was a consensus that Fournette was the best of the group. It's hard to get too excited about Fournette, at least from a fantasy perspective, now that he's with the Jaguars. For one thing, the Jags still have both TJ Yeldon and Chris Ivory on their roster. It's highly unlikely Fournette will receive a majority of the touches, and it's possible he won't even get a plurality. On top of that, Jacksonville's offensive line was one of the worst run-blocking groups in the league last year, and while they traded for Brandon Albert in the offseason, he may not be the entire cure for what ailed the unit. Finally, we turn to Corey Davis. Talent, environment, and opportunity is the holy trinity of fantasy production. After going to the Titans with the 5th overall pick, Davis has it all. He proved during his 4 years at Western Michigan he has the talent. No one leaves college as the leading receiver in the history of Division I or Football Bowl subdivision as Davis did with 5,285 yards by accident, without talent, or by beating up on weak opponents. Marcus Mariota is an ascending star, DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry form a lethal backfield duo, and the Titans' offense is on the rise. The leading receivers on the roster from a year ago are Rashard Matthews, Tajay Sharp, and Harry Douglas, giving him the best chance of any rookie to be his team's leading receiver this season.
After approximately 5,700 mock drafts, we got the real thing over the weekend. Emily Kaplan and Chris Burke are here to forecast what the draft means moving forward. All right, Emily and Chris, congratulations, first of all, on making it through. Emily, which team had the best haul from first round to 7th round over the weekend?
I'm going with the Titans. I know that everybody is talking about the Browns and the 49ers, but I love what the Titans did. And I date this back to the ransom that they got for the #1 pick last year with the Rams. And so that includes Jack Conklin and Austin Johnson and Derrick Henry. But look, they addressed their 2 biggest needs right away in the first round. They didn't overthink it. Corey Davis is the #1 receiver Marcus Mariota needs. They have Adoree Jackson in the backfield. They also got a tight end. I just really like what the Titans did in this draft.
Okay, Chris Burke, who had the best haul?
Yeah, I like that Corey Davis pick a lot. I think he's a great fit there. I like the Baltimore draft, and that I'd say that admitting that I thought they'd take a wide receiver somewhere, and that Marlon Humphrey probably wasn't my #2 cornerback, but I still think Humphrey's a guy that helps them at a spot where they were weak last year. That secondary needed to get better, needed to get deeper, and then I loved what they did. On day 2, they doubled up at pass rusher, those edge defender spots with Tyus Bowser and Tim Williams. And I think Tim Williams could be a great value at 78. He's a guy who got to the quarterback every time he was on the field at Alabama. And they got Chris Wormley, too, who I think could have been a borderline round 1, round 2 guy, slipped into round 3. He drops right in as a defensive end in their 3-4 scheme. I think it was a great first 4 picks, and then they rounded it out with some offensive linemen later. So all in all, pretty nice weekend for the Ravens.
Yeah, Chris Wormley, the Michigan defensive end, a little Jim Harbaugh to John Harbaugh action on that pick. All right, Emily, which rookie do you think will have the biggest impact going into next year?
I'm going with Leonard Fournette, and it's not because I think he's going to be the leading rusher of all rookies next year or even the leading rusher of the NFL. I just think he adds such a different dynamic to that Jacksonville offense. We know that Blake Bortles is not himself. There's something ailing him. So they gave him a big power back that can relieve some of that pressure and change that offense. So I was super happy that they didn't overthink it. They went with the best guy available there for them. And I think that he impacts Jacksonville, and we can all pick them as our trendy sleeper team again, and we will all be wrong.
For the 2nd year in a row, we can pick them for our trendy sleeper team. All right, Chris Burke, who do you think is going to have the most immediate impact next year?
They're not getting me again. I'm not going to do it again. I'll pick the Chargers for the 8th straight year and be wrong about that one.
There you go.
I think the rookie that has the chance to make the biggest impact is Deshaun Watson. And I think, Houston trading up to get him, A, shows that they were desperate to land a quarterback, but B, I think puts him in a position now where Watson steps in there. They're going to say all the right things about Tom Savage and how they think he can be the quarterback. They think they'll give him a chance, but Watson's ready to step in and compete for a starting job right away. That was one of his big selling points over a lot of the other quarterbacks in this class, was just how NFL ready he was because of his experience. I don't think the Texans can go through another year where they're kind of waxing and waning, trying to figure out what's happening at quarterback. I think the sooner they turn this thing over to Deshaun Watson, the better. I think he gives them a better chance to get deep into the playoffs than Tom Savage does. And so this really is potentially a franchise-changing pick for them if Watson plays out the way that he can.
Chris, I'm going to go back to you. Give me a later round pick that you think is going to make some noise next year. Someone who is maybe not on the radar now, but we'll all know their name come the 2017 season.
I liked Jake Butt to Denver, Xavier Woods to Dallas were both nice picks in round 5, round 6, respectively. Malachi Dupree in round 7 is one that kind of stood out for me for the Packers. And not just because we've seen LSU receivers have more success in the NFL statistically than they've had in college. I'm not comparing him to Odell Beckham Jr., but we've seen that system, the quarterback play there, kind of hold down receivers there. So I think he has a chance to be a really productive NFL receiver. But he's big. He's 6'2". He's got 4.5 speed, had almost a 40-inch vertical at the combine. So he's got some athleticism. He's an interesting guy on the outside. We know that Green Bay will give players shots if they earn them. We saw Geronimo Allison have some success. Jeff Janis has had some success. So there could be an opportunity there. I think he's a guy that could develop a nice rapport with Aaron Rodgers because of that athleticism, because of his ability to kind of work and stay open. And so he's interesting for me. Maybe he doesn't make the roster, but I think he could end up being a good fit there.
Emily, what about a late round pick that you think is going to have an impact on the league next year?
I was talking to a scout. He's clearly a Southern scout because he texted me. I think y'all are sleeping on Samaje P. Ryan. And he went to the Redskins. And I think if you want to look at a guy who could be like the next Jordan Howard and have a breakout season, it would be Samaje. He went to Oklahoma. We were all talking about Joe Mixon. Samaje is the guy that broke Billy Sims' rushing record. He's known as a home run hitter. So I really love what Washington did in this draft. I'm pretty sure they were still using Scott McCloughan's draft board because it was a really good draft. And I think Samaje has a chance to be the starter. I mean, we all know that Matt Jones is on the trading block. So maybe this is dipping a little into the fantasy advice as your sleeper. But I'm really excited to see what he can do.
All right, we know that the draft is not a perfect science. For every great player, there's going to be someone who is a bust. Emily, I'm going to go to you on this one. Who do you think has the potential to really fall short of expectations from this draft class?
I think I'm really going to upset Chris here because I've read all his stuff and I know who his draft crushes are. One is Deshaun Watson and 2 is Jabril Peppers. And maybe it's just because he lives in Ann Arbor. But look, I love Jabril Peppers. I'm from New Jersey too. We have to root for our own. I want him to do well. But what I heard from everybody going into this draft was Jabril Peppers will be a good NFL player if a team has a plan for him. Well, when I hear the Browns say we're going to start playing him on offense and figure out a way for him to play there, I just cringe because I can't think of the last situation where it worked out when a player played both offensive and defensive snaps. So, Chris, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm an idiot. But I don't want this kid to fail. I just am scared that he might if they ask him to do that.
Chris, you going to defend Peppers?
I would never do that. I think Jabril Peppers has talents that translate to the next level. And I think that's also a nice fit for him because you put him in that Greg Williams defense. I think he'll scheme ways to get him in some matchups that work. Maybe he's not a guy that you play at free safety on every down. Maybe he doesn't hold up at linebacker on every down, but I think the big selling point for Peppers is the way you can kind of mix and match him. So you can blitz him, can play him as sort of an overhang guy in the slot. He can play that strong safety role. And I think it's also, we saw in that Cleveland draft, I think, they're planning for 2-3 years down the road. They're not drafting and making moves to be a contender next season, I don't think. And so you give Peppers a year or two to develop. I look at it kind of the same way to that David Njoku pick at tight end. He's a guy that has all the athletic skills, all the upside in the world. You just got to figure out exactly what he can and can't do. And I think it's going to be a similar learning curve on the other side of the ball for Peppers.
I don't know the last time a defensive player of the year from any conference then went to go play on offense at the very next level. It's a little interesting. And for David Njoku, I mean, they got rid of their other tight end, so I think that he's going to be thrown into the fire. Chris, a potential bust that you saw, someone who you just don't think is going to live up to expectations, who is it?
Well, I'll mention one quickly because Emily just came at my guy, and I'll go back at someone she mentioned liking. Adoree Jackson, I think, is interesting in a lot of the ways Peppers is interesting because I don't know exactly what he can do defensively. I think he's really raw as a cornerback. Maybe you play him in the slot. I don't know that he has the size to really hold up outside. So that fit as a first rounder, I think, is going to come down as much to what he can do at special teams, maybe on offense too, as what he can do defensively. The other obvious potential bust for me, and I think probably for a lot of people, is Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago, just because of the circumstances surrounding how he landed there and the setup there. You know, he's probably behind Mike Glennon. It's not like you're dropping in behind Drew Brees or Tom Brady in terms of learning behind a quarterback and trying to develop into that role. I don't know how stable that organization is going to be year to year. I mean, if they go 4-12, 3-13 this year, is Ryan Pace still the GM there? Is John Fox still the coach? Otherwise, you're talking about a second regime for a quarterback you just tried to bank your future on. So that's one to me that I think has obvious potential weak spots. And really, if it doesn't pan out early for Mitch Trubisky, you know, I don't know that 3-4 years down the road, we're really talking about this being a great fit because I don't know what the Bears are going to look like in 3-4 years.
Yeah, it was definitely the most shocking moment of the draft, I think, even saying that now as all 7 rounds have been completed. Emily, one of the superstars of the draft was the new GM of the 49ers, John Lynch. Seems, by all accounts, to have knocked it out of the park. What did we learn about John Lynch in this draft?
That he has 49ers fans wrapped around his finger. He was charismatic. He was ballsy. He made great moves with conviction. And all is well right now in Santa Clara, which is not something you could have said the last couple of years.
Yeah. Chris, what did you learn about John Lynch?
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw that he knows what he's doing. I think that's always a concern going into the first draft with the new general manager. And I think we also saw that he didn't necessarily feel compelled to reach for a quarterback, at least in round 1. He reached for a quarterback in round 3. I mean, if there was a knock on his draft, it was in trading up for C.J. Beathard, who I think almost definitely would have been there on day 3. I'm not entirely sure why they made that move, but everything after round 1 was gravy. They got the extra picks. They still got Solomon Thomas. And then Reuben Foster, to go back up and get Reuben Foster, I wonder why other teams didn't make that move, because I think the talent is unquestionable. But, you know, B, I think that shows that he's willing to be aggressive. Like Emily said, you know, if the opportunity is there to make this team better, he'll take it. It's not one where you have to always trade back and stock up on picks. Eventually, you've got to use those picks on impact guys.
I thought it was really illuminating in Peter King's Monday Morning Quarterback today to know that Reuben Foster was the 3rd player on their board, and the 49ers got him at the end of the first round. Wow. All right, guys, we always know that the draft will be remembered for something. One thing's going to stick out above the rest. Emily, what will the 2017 draft be remembered for?
These 3 rookie quarterbacks that teams all traded up for and mortgaged a lot of their future on. And I think the 3 fates of these franchises depend on how they handle these rookie quarterback situations. And you mentioned Chicago, and obviously I'm here in Chicago, and I was with the Bears this weekend, and I think that's the most telling because I'm one of the defenders where I'm okay with what Ryan Pace did, as long as he can stick to his plan and doesn't play Mitch Trubisky right away and does sit him for a year or 2 until he's ready. But how many times since we've heard Aaron Rodgers worked out like that have we seen a team successfully do that? And I can't believe I'm giving Blake Bortles this much airtime, but that just comes to mind when they say they're going to sit him right away and then burn his red shirt out of desperation. So I think years from now, we will remember Mitch Trubisky and Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, and maybe one of them will pan out as a franchise quarterback. I hope all 3 do, but I am a little skeptical.
Chris, what are you going to remember 2017's draft?
The quarterbacks obviously stand out as always. There's so much activity. I think it was really interesting. For me, what really was surprising, I think, was how much offensive talent went early on. We heard so much talk about what a deep defensive class this was, how many elite players there were on that side of the ball. And I think we saw teams kind of put off those positions until rounds 2, round 3. They still found really quality players there, but we saw that run on quarterbacks early. We saw a run on wide receivers a lot earlier than I think anyone expected, with Davis, Williams, and Ross all going in the top 10. And then 2 running backs up there too, in Fournette and McCaffrey. So all those guys now are all going to kind of be linked throughout this entire draft class because of the defensive talent that slipped, but really because of how much offensive talent went high. We're always going to look back now and sort of track how these offensive players did, because teams did pass on some really, really good defensive players to get these skill position guys.
We'll see if they live to regret it. Emily, Chris, only 360 days until the 2018 NFL Draft in Kansas City. I'm sure you two can't wait. Thank you. Great job this weekend.
Bye, Maggie.
Bye. Less than a week ago, I admonished the Cincinnati Bengals for their continued support of Adam Pac-Man Jones. Jones has a laundry list of arrests, including one in January where he is alleged to have shoved a police officer and spit on an attending nurse. I wondered how the Bengals were evaluating their potential draft picks on the basis of character while allowing Jones to berate reporters and roam the locker room. Now the Bengals have drafted Joe Mixon, and not one person was surprised. How sad is that? A young man punches a woman in the face, and the first thought is, yeah, that sounds like a Bengals pick. But in reality, Cincinnati was the worst possible landing spot for Mixon. Head coach Marvin Lewis says that the team has a plan for mentoring the running back, yet he wouldn't divulge any of the details. So why should fans expect it to be any different than the playbook the team has been using for Pac-Man Jones? Ignore the behavior, excuse the behavior, reward the behavior. If Mixon has another indiscretion, what type of consequences should he expect from the team? Looking at the way the team has treated Pac-Man Jones, it's likely a pat on the back. Lewis can talk about the due diligence they did on Mixon, but as recently as last fall, Mixon got into a spat with a female parking attendant, ripping up a ticket she gave him, throwing the pieces in her face, then inching towards her in his car in an intimidating manner. Does that sound like someone who understands where the line of decency is or cares that they are crossing it? I'm not bothered by Mixon getting a second chance. I just wish for his sake it was with a team that held their players accountable. The Bengals are not that team. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of SI Now. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. But until then, keep it locked to SI.com for all your latest news. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. See you tomorrow.